Congratulations. You've been hired as a restaurant inspector. Not exactly the glamorous career you envisioned when you studied culinary arts, right? But somebody has to make sure the public doesn't get food poisoning from their favorite neighborhood joints. The pay is steady, the benefits are decent, and you get to eat at different places every day, though after what I'm about to tell you, you might lose your appetite for dining out. My name is David Chin, and I've been working as a health inspector for the Las Vegas Health Department for about 8 years now. 8 years of checking refrigerator temperatures, examining food storage practices, and writing violation reports for restaurants that think basic sanitation is optional. But before I tell you what you're really getting into with this job, let me give you some context. Because if you're considering this career, and I hope you are since we desperately need competent people in this field, you need to understand that restaurant inspection involves more than just checking expiration dates and making sure people wash their hands. Sometimes you uncover things that have nothing to do with health code violations and everything to do with human evil. The case I'm about to describe happened in 2019, but it started much earlier than that. It began with a family business that had been operating successfully for over 20 years, serving what customers consistently rated as the best pork buns in Chinatown. The Golden Dragon was everything you'd want in a family restaurant. 3 generations working together, recipes passed down through decades, a loyal customer base that treated the place like a second home. The kind of establishment that makes communities stronger. Until it became the scene of the most disturbing crime I've ever encountered in my professional career. I first visited the Golden Dragon in March 2019 as part of a routine inspection cycle. Every restaurant in our district gets inspected at least twice a year, more frequently if there have been complaints or violations. The Golden Dragon had been on my rotation for about 3 years, and it was always one of my easier stops. The restaurant was owned and operated by the Wong family. Henry Wong, the patriarch, had started the business in 1998 after immigrating from Hong Kong. His wife, Susan, managed the front-of-house operations. Their 3 children, Michael, 28, Sarah, 25, and Tommy, 22, all worked in various capacities along with Henry's elderly mother, who everyone called Nai Nai. The Golden Dragon specialized in traditional Cantonese cuisine, but their signature dish was char siu bao, barbecue pork buns that were so popular they often sold out before noon. Food bloggers wrote reviews specifically about those pork buns. Yelp was filled with 5-star ratings praising the authentic family recipe and incredible meat quality. During my inspections, the Wong family was always cooperative, professional, and genuinely seemed to take food safety seriously. Their kitchen was clean, their storage practices were textbook perfect, and their staff knew proper procedures without having to be prompted. Henry Wong spoke excellent English and was always eager to show me their latest improvements. New equipment, updated storage systems, additional training for staff members. He was proud of his business and wanted to maintain the highest standards. Inspector Chin, he would say during my visits, we treat every customer like family. Family means everything is perfect, yes. The Golden Dragon consistently earned high inspection scores. In 3 years of regular visits, I'd written maybe 5 minor violations, things like a thermometer that needed calibration or a minor issue with cleaning chemical storage. Nothing that suggested any serious problems with their operation. Which is why what I discovered in March 2019 was so shocking. My inspection that month started like any other. I arrived at the restaurant around 10 a.m., during the prep time before lunch service. Henry Wong greeted me at the front door with his usual friendly professionalism. Inspector Chin, good to see you. Everything is ready for inspection. We have new freezer units installed last month. Very excited to show you. I followed Henry through the dining room toward the kitchen. The restaurant was busy with prep work, staff members chopping vegetables, preparing sauces, setting up for the lunch rush. Normal restaurant sounds and smells. But as we approached the kitchen, I noticed something that wasn't normal. There were only 3 staff members visible: Henry, Susan, and one young man I didn't recognize. In previous inspections, I'd always seen the entire Wong family working together. The children, the grandmother, extended family members who helped during busy periods. Where's the rest of your family today? I asked Henry as we entered the kitchen. Henry's expression changed slightly. Still friendly, but with an edge of tension that hadn't been there before. Oh, they're taking break. Vacation to visit family in Hong Kong. Very long trip, very expensive. Save money for long time. Something about his answer felt rehearsed. During my previous inspections, Henry had mentioned that the whole family rarely traveled together because someone always needed to stay behind to run the restaurant. The Golden Dragon was a 7-day-a-week operation. When did they leave? I asked, beginning my standard inspection routine of checking refrigerator temperatures. 2 weeks ago. Maybe 3 weeks. Time flies, you know? I made a mental note of the vague timeline but continued with my inspection. Everything in the kitchen appeared to be in order. Proper food storage, correct temperatures, clean surfaces. The new freezer units Henry had mentioned were commercial grade and properly installed. But as I worked my way through the kitchen, I noticed some details that seemed inconsistent with a family vacation story. The prep stations were set up for the full staff complement. There were 5 cutting boards laid out, multiple prep containers organized as if expecting several people to work simultaneously. If most of the family was away, why prepare workspace for people who weren't there? More significantly, the daily inventory logs showed ordering patterns consistent with full staff operation. They were ordering enough ingredients to support meal preparation for a complete kitchen crew, not the reduced staff that would be expected with family members away. Henry, I said, reviewing the inventory logs, these supply orders seem pretty large for a reduced crew. Henry looked over my shoulder at the paperwork. Yes. We prepare for when family return. Also, business very good lately. Many new customers. That explanation was plausible, but something about Henry's demeanor was making me uncomfortable. He was usually calm and confident during inspections. Today he seemed nervous, constantly checking his watch and glancing toward the back of the kitchen. I continued my inspection, checking the walk-in cooler, examining food storage areas, reviewing temperature logs. Everything was technically in compliance with health code requirements. But when I reached the meat storage area, I found something that bothered me. The Golden Dragon kept their meat inventory in a large walk-in freezer that was divided into sections for different types of protein. I'd inspected this freezer many times before and was familiar with their usual storage patterns. Today there was significantly more pork than I'd ever seen them stock. The entire back wall of the freezer was filled with vacuum-sealed packages of what appeared to be barbecue pork, the filling for their famous buns. That's a lot of pork, I commented to Henry. Planning for a big event? Yes. Very big catering order this week. Wedding party. 500 people. Very busy. Henry seemed relieved to have an explanation for the unusual quantity of meat, but his answer raised another question in my mind. In previous conversations, Henry had mentioned that the Golden Dragon didn't do large catering events because they didn't have the staff capacity. Their business model was focused on restaurant service and small takeout orders. I didn't press the issue during the inspection, but I made a note to follow up on the catering claim. Large catering operations require special permits and additional health department oversight. The rest of my inspection proceeded without incident. I completed my paperwork, discussed a few minor recommendations with Henry, and prepared to leave. Henry, can you give me the contact information for the catering event? We'll need to schedule a separate inspection for food service operations of that size. Henry's nervousness returned immediately. Oh yes, of course. I have information in office. I call you later with details. That was unusual. Most restaurants keep catering contracts readily available, especially for events large enough to require hundreds of pounds of meat preparation. I left the Golden Dragon with a clean inspection report but a nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. Over the years, I developed instincts about restaurant operations that went beyond technical compliance with health codes. Good inspectors learn to read the atmosphere of a business, to notice when things feel different from normal patterns. The Golden Dragon felt different. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before in 8 years of restaurant inspection. I started investigating one of my assigned businesses. I began by checking the permits database for any recent catering applications from the Golden Dragon. There were none. No special event permits, no requests for expanded food service operations, no documentation supporting Henry's claim about a 500-person wedding catering job. Next, I reviewed their business license history and recent health department interactions. The Golden Dragon had maintained consistent licensing for over 20 years. No recent changes, no violations, no complaints from customers. But when I checked missing persons reports with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, something I'd never thought to do for a restaurant inspection, I found something disturbing. 3 weeks earlier, a woman named Janet Liu had filed a missing persons report for her boyfriend, Michael Wong. According to the report, Michael had failed to show up for a planned dinner date and hadn't been answering his phone or responding to text messages for several days. Michael Wong worked at his family's restaurant, the Golden Dragon. The missing persons report listed Michael's emergency contact as his father, Henry Wong. When police had contacted Henry about his son's whereabouts, Henry told them that Michael had gone to Hong Kong with other family members for an extended vacation. But Janet Liu told police that Michael had never mentioned any travel plans. According to her statement, Michael was excited about several upcoming events in Las Vegas and had made no indication that he was planning to leave the country. I spent the rest of that afternoon reading through the missing persons file and cross-referencing it with what I'd observed during my inspection. The timeline didn't match. Henry had told me the family had been gone for 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. The missing persons report was filed exactly 3 weeks earlier. If the family had left for Hong Kong vacation, Michael's girlfriend would have known about it. More concerning was the fact that multiple family members were allegedly traveling together, but only one missing persons report had been filed. If Michael Wong was missing, where were his siblings? His grandmother? His mother? That evening, I made a decision that would change my career and my understanding of what restaurant inspection really involves. I drove back to the Golden Dragon after closing time. The restaurant was dark, but I could see Henry Wong's car parked in the back alley behind the building. There were lights on in what appeared to be office space above the restaurant. I sat in my car for about 30 minutes, trying to decide whether I was overreacting to a few inconsistencies in a routine inspection. Maybe the family really was on vacation. Maybe Michael Wong was with them and his girlfriend was simply mistaken about his travel plans. But as I was preparing to leave, I saw something that convinced me my suspicions were justified. Henry Wong came out the back door of the restaurant carrying several large black garbage bags. He loaded them into his car and drove away. Restaurants generate a lot of garbage, but disposing of it personally after hours instead of using commercial waste services is unusual. Most restaurants have contracts with waste management companies that handle pickup during regular business hours. I followed Henry at a distance, curious about where he was taking restaurant garbage at 11 p.m. Henry drove to an industrial area about 15 minutes from the restaurant. He pulled into an empty lot behind a warehouse complex and began transferring the garbage bags from his car to a large dumpster that served the warehouse. From my position across the street, I could see Henry working quickly, as if he wanted to complete the task as soon as possible. He was clearly familiar with the location and seemed to know the dumpster schedule. He was disposing of restaurant waste in a location where it would be picked up by different waste management service. Why would a restaurant owner drive 15 minutes to dispose of garbage in someone else's dumpster? The next morning, I contacted my supervisor at the health department and explained my concerns about the Golden Dragon. I described the missing family members, the inconsistencies in Henry's statements, and his unusual garbage disposal behavior. My supervisor, Maria Santos, had been with the health department for over 15 years. She'd seen every type of restaurant violation imaginable, but she'd never dealt with a case that potentially involved missing persons. "David," she said, "this is outside our normal jurisdiction. If you think there's criminal activity, you need to contact the police." "But what if I'm wrong?" I asked. "What if the family really is on vacation and I'm creating problems for a business owner based on speculation?" Maria was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that I'll never forget. "In 15 years of restaurant inspection, I've learned that when experienced inspectors develop strong intuitions about a business, those intuitions are usually based on real observations, even if we can't immediately explain what we're seeing. Trust your instincts." That afternoon, I contacted the detective handling Michael Wong's missing persons case. Detective Rebecca Martinez was a 20-year veteran of LVMPD's Missing Persons Unit. She was professional, thorough, and took my concerns seriously despite the unusual nature of my involvement. "Inspector Chin," she said during our phone conversation, "I appreciate you reaching out. We've been investigating Michael Wong's disappearance, but we haven't made much progress. The family claims he's traveling internationally, but we haven't been able to verify that independently." I shared my observations from the restaurant inspection: the missing family members, the unusual meat inventory, Henry's nervous behavior, and his late-night garbage disposal activities. Detective Martinez asked me to write a formal statement documenting everything I'd observed. She also requested copies of all my inspection reports from the Golden Dragon over the previous 3 years. "We'll need to coordinate any further investigation," she told me. "Continue your normal inspection activities, but don't take any actions that might alert the Wong family to police interest." 2 days later, Detective Martinez called me with an update that confirmed my worst fears. "Inspector Chin, we've received additional missing persons reports. Michael Wong's sister Sarah and his brother Tommy have both been reported missing by friends and co-workers. All 3 siblings were last seen at the family restaurant. What about the grandmother? And Michael's mother? We're still investigating." Henry Wong claims they're all traveling together, but we haven't been able to contact any of them independently. No international travel records, no credit card activity, no social media updates. Detective Martinez asked me to schedule another inspection of the Golden Dragon, this time accompanied by police officers who would be posing as health department trainees. We need to examine that meat inventory you mentioned, she said, and we want to observe Henry Wong's behavior under closer scrutiny. The next morning, I returned to the Golden Dragon with 2 undercover officers posing as new health inspectors who were shadowing me for training purposes. Henry Wong seemed even more nervous than during my previous visit. He kept checking his watch, wiping his hands on his apron, and making small talk that seemed forced and unnatural. Inspector Chin, good to see you again. Very busy today, very busy. Maybe inspection can be quick. This is a routine follow-up inspection, Henry. These are new inspectors learning the procedures. We'll need to be thorough. As we moved through the kitchen, the undercover officers observed Henry's behavior while I conducted a standard inspection. Everything appeared to be in order from a health code perspective, but Henry's nervousness was increasingly obvious. When we reached the walk-in freezer, I noticed that the large quantity of pork I'd seen during my previous visit was gone. Henry, what happened to all the barbecue pork? You had a large inventory last week. Oh yes, the wedding catering. Very successful event. All used up. One of the undercover officers asked to see documentation for the catering event. Henry promised to retrieve it from his office but never returned with any paperwork. Instead, he made an excuse about needing to prepare for lunch service and asked us to complete our inspection quickly. As we were finishing up, I noticed something that made my stomach turn. In the prep area where the famous pork buns were assembled, there was a batch of filling that had just been prepared. The meat looked different from the barbecue pork I'd seen in previous inspections. Darker, with an unusual texture. Henry, this pork looks different than usual. New supplier? Henry's face went pale. Yes, new supplier. Very good price. Same recipe, different meat. But when I looked more closely at the prep station, I saw something that shouldn't have been there. Mixed in with the pork filling were what appeared to be small pieces of bone. Not the kind of small bones you might find in properly processed meat, but fragments that looked like they'd been incompletely removed during preparation. Commercial pork filling for buns is processed to remove all bone fragments. Finding bones in prepared meat is a serious health code violation and suggests either contaminated ingredients or improper processing. Henry, there are bone fragments in this meat. That's a major food safety issue. Henry looked at the prep station and I could see panic in his eyes. I fix immediately. Throw away all. Start new batch. But it was too late. The undercover officers had seen what I'd seen, and they were already moving to prevent Henry from disposing of the evidence. Sir, please step away from the prep station. We need to preserve this for testing. That's when Henry Wong broke down completely. He started crying, speaking rapidly in Cantonese, and trying to explain something to us in broken English between sobs. Not supposed to happen. Family, they fight about money. Gambling debt. Very bad debt. Man come to restaurant, want payment. Family, they no have money. The undercover officers immediately called for backup and began securing the scene as a potential crime scene. Within an hour, the Golden Dragon was surrounded by police vehicles. Detective Martinez arrived with a full forensic team and a warrant to search the entire restaurant. What they found over the next several hours was worse than anything I could have imagined. In the basement storage area beneath the restaurant, police discovered evidence of a massacre that had taken place approximately 3 weeks earlier. Bloodstains, bone fragments, and personal belongings belonging to Michael Wong, his siblings, his mother, and his grandmother were found throughout the basement space. According to the forensic evidence, all 5 family members had been killed in the restaurant basement, then dismembered to facilitate disposal of their bodies. Most disturbing of all was the discovery that linked the crime scene to the restaurant's daily operations. In the meat processing area of the kitchen, forensic investigators found human DNA mixed with pork DNA in the preparation equipment. The commercial meat grinder had been used to process human remains along with pork, creating a mixture that had been served to customers as the restaurant's famous barbecue pork bun filling. 4 weeks after the family was murdered, Henry Wong had continued operating the restaurant, serving unsuspecting customers food that contained the remains of his own family members. The investigation that followed revealed the full scope of Henry Wong's crimes and the circumstances that led to them. Henry had developed a severe gambling addiction that had grown worse over several years. He owed over $300,000 to organized crime figures who were demanding immediate payment. When Henry couldn't pay his debts, the creditors had threatened to harm his family. In desperation, Henry had arranged to use the restaurant as collateral for additional loans, promising to turn over the business to his creditors if he couldn't repay them. But his family had discovered Henry's gambling debts and confronted him about risking their shared business. The confrontation had escalated into a violent argument that ended with Henry killing all 5 family members in a rage. Rather than reporting the murders or seeking help, Henry had decided to cover up the crime and continue operating the restaurant as if nothing had happened. He dismembered the bodies to make disposal easier, but instead of disposing of all the remains immediately, he had mixed human flesh with pork to create the restaurant's signature filling. Henry's plan was to gradually dispose of the evidence while maintaining the appearance that his family was traveling abroad. He thought he could operate the restaurant alone until the investigation into his family's disappearance eventually died down. The forensic investigation determined that over the 3 weeks between the murders and his arrest, Henry had served approximately 2,000 pork buns containing human remains to customers. The Golden Dragon case became one of the most disturbing criminal cases in Las Vegas history. Henry Wong was charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder and multiple charges related to food tampering and public endangerment. During his trial, Henry pleaded guilty to all charges in exchange for a life sentence without the possibility of parole. He died by suicide in prison before serving 2 years of his sentence. The psychological impact on the restaurant's customers was devastating. Many people required counseling after learning that they had unknowingly consumed human remains. Several customers filed lawsuits against the restaurant and the health department, claiming that our inspections should have detected the contamination. The case led to significant changes in restaurant inspection protocols. Health departments across the country now include additional training for inspectors on recognizing signs of criminal activity beyond standard food safety violations. For me personally, the Golden Dragon case changed everything about how I approach restaurant inspection. I can no longer walk into a restaurant kitchen without thinking about what might be hidden behind normal-looking operations. I pay closer attention to staff behavior, inconsistencies in business operations, and signs that something beyond health code compliance might be wrong. I've also learned that restaurant inspectors have a responsibility that goes beyond checking temperatures and cleanliness standards. We're often the only outside authorities who have regular access to restaurant operations. Sometimes we're in a position to observe evidence of crimes that would otherwise go undetected. The training I received after the Golden Dragon case included instruction on recognizing signs of human trafficking, labor exploitation, and other criminal activities that can be hidden within legitimate restaurant operations. I've since identified several cases of workers being held in exploitative conditions, restaurants being used for money laundering, and establishments where illegal gambling operations were conducted in back rooms. None of these discoveries were as horrific as what Henry Wong did to his family and customers, but they've all involved criminal activity that was detected through careful attention to details during routine health inspections. If you're considering a career in restaurant inspection, you need to understand that the job involves more than technical knowledge of food safety regulations. You need to develop observational skills that go beyond checking temperatures and expiration dates. You need to pay attention to human behavior, business operations, and environmental details that might indicate problems beyond health code violations. You need to trust your instincts when something feels wrong, even if you can't immediately explain what you're observing. And you need to be prepared for the possibility that routine inspections might uncover evidence of serious crimes. The restaurant industry is generally filled with hardworking people trying to provide good food and honest service to their communities. Most of the businesses you'll inspect are exactly what they appear to be, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're crime scenes disguised as family restaurants, and sometimes you'll be the only person in a position to recognize that and take action to protect public safety. The Golden Dragon case taught me that restaurant inspection is ultimately about more than preventing food poisoning. Sometimes it's about preventing something much worse.